Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for session 3 in our Science of Reading and Literacy Intervention Tools for Paraprofessionals and Support Staff series. We're so excited to offer this last session for you guys. As you know, this is part of a 3-part series. The first 2 sessions happened over the last 2 weeks. This week, we will do session 3 times. So if your colleagues aren't able to be here today, please encourage them to join us at one of our sessions throughout the week. My name is Sarah Stillman. I am a professional development specialist here at the Louisiana Department of Education. And I am so excited to be here with you guys today to share some really amazing tools that will help you do the work of supporting students in your classrooms each and every day. Now, we say this every week, but we really do mean it. We are so incredibly grateful for the work that you guys do as paraprofessionals. We know that the work of our schools cannot happen without your support in the classroom. You truly do make a difference each and every day, and you all are the miracle workers of this school. So we do want to thank you guys for the work that you do. And just know that it is appreciated, and we do think deeply about how we can support you in making sure that your work is as meaningful as it can possibly be. Again, this is session 3. So in our first session, we provided an introduction and an overview to the science of reading. In our second session, we talked about what sorts of things you can do to support literacy in your classroom. And in this third session today, we're going to talk about using literacy resources to support instruction. So we're going to talk about some specific tools that you have access to that you can pull to support students in your classrooms. Now, I do always like to bring it back to the Scarborough's reading rope because this is such a powerful infographic that shows the process that students go through as they learn to read. And as you can see in these earliest stages, reading is separated into language comprehension and word recognition. We know that skilled reading is the product of these 2 variables. So the extent to which students can comprehend language and their ability to recognize words, right? Now, when we think about the earliest stages of reading, we know that this work is largely separate. In many of our curricula, you might have 2 different programs, your knowledge strand and your skills strand in core knowledge. Foundations, it would be your word recognition strand. Your guidebooks is addressing your language comprehension typically. But the work that we're going to focus on today stays here in these word recognition strands, these blue and green strands of this rope right here at the bottom. Phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. We know that students who really are struggling in ELA, more often than not, the reason is because they have gaps and issues here in these word recognition strands. We know that these strands reflect the process that students go to get to that point of sight recognition. We want our students to be able to recognize words by sight. And as we've said throughout the series, this does not mean sight words like we used to do, where we would flash students cards for sight words. We know that as students move, as they build that foundation in phonological awareness, and as they become proficient decoders, they move to a point of sight recognition of words, where they're reading the way that we do, where they can look at any word and recognize it instantaneously without having to think too hard about it. This is our goal for our students, but they only get there through that way. But sometimes students fall apart in these first 2 strands of the word recognition strands. And the way that we move them to that point of sight recognition is by knowing where the breakdown is and supporting them in that way. Excuse me. Now, you might be saying, well, I'm not really sure what to do. We do have a curriculum, our teacher is using those resources, but what can I do? Well, I want to direct you guys to the Ldoe Literacy Library. This is a library that's ever expanding, um, full of resources that may be useful to you in supporting reading instruction in the classroom. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Lift Kit, which contains a library of resources that you can use to support your students. One of my colleagues is going to put a link to the literacy library in our chat box so that you'll be able to access that. But I'm going to take you guys there today. Give me 1 second. Jump right in there. Hoping that you can see this. This is our literacy landing page here at the Ldoe. You can see, a lot of information about the work that we do. But if you come down here, we have 3 little buttons. This first one is the literacy library, and I'm going to click on that. It has our little crawfish right here. And this is our literacy library. And then what you're going to see is that we have a literacy library. It's organized by the 4 pillars that we have established as being foundational to the work of literacy. Literacy goals, instruction, intervention, and extensions, professional growth, and families. Right here, we have a link to our lift kit and to our fire kit as well. You can see another little image of our crawfish. But you're going to find that under each of these pillars, you can click and there will be resources. So for example, if you want to, if you're like working with families or you want to suggest to your teacher, what are some things that we can do for our families? Or maybe people in your community that are asking, what can I do to support my students? Well, here we have many different resources. You can see right here, we have some grab and go activities. These are activities that you can pull and do in small groups. You could share with students, you could share with families. You might do, some of these are not necessarily super appropriate for a small group, but these are things that some of them really are. So right here for vocabulary memory, this is something that you can do with your students in your small groups. And this activity, we always in the corner here say like what activity this would be best used by schools or families, and this is appropriate for both. It gives you a list of your materials and the different things that you can do and a few little extras to look at as well. So these are some great resources there. I'm going to click out of here. You can also see that over here we have some resources for families, things that they can do to support students. So you can see, for example, these are, if you click here, these are just some different things that families can do. Family book clubs, family movie nights, things of that nature. And I also want to show you guys, we have building literacy skills at home by age. And we also have these in different languages. So if you have students who speak different languages in your schools, you can share those for them. But for example, if you come to building literacy skills at home for your newborns, we'll have those here for them. Just gives you some information that you can share. And it would be great for you to peruse and look around at on your time. I want to encourage you to come back to our literacy library, at your convenience and look through these many different resources, because I think these many resources under these pillars, you will find incredibly valuable and incredibly useful. So please come check. One thing I do want to draw your attention to, though, is if you want to know more about the science of reading, if, we've just kind of scratched the surface here. We do have a K-2 teacher PD series. We have a leader PD series. If you support middle and high school, we have a middle and high school series. These are longer and more in depth, but they will go into the details that might help you and support your work. I know a lot of people tell us that they may listen to these in the car ride home. It's a great way to do that. So please consider reviewing those. We have one on writing as well. Talks about maybe how writing is different. And if you have colleagues who would like to look at the paraprofessional series, those are right here too. So please come look through these resources. They're very, very helpful. But the one that I really want to draw your attention to today is our lift kit. This is the one that I think that you will find the most helpful in supporting students in your work as a paraprofessional. The lift kit is a very, very unique resource that will diagnose gaps in foundational skills. Now, before I go on, the lift kit is really geared for students in grades 3rd and up. In grades K through 2, this is where we're teaching these foundational skills. We're learning them, but very often embedded in our curricula are resources that are giving us the same information as lift. So if you work in that K2 world, understanding lift is going to be valuable because it's going to help you understand the assessments that are embedded in your curricula so that you can pull information from those and support your students. Our activity library that I'm going to show you will give you resources to support students if the gaps are there. But that diagnostic piece is really only appropriate for students in grades 3rd and beyond because it presumes that they've already been taught this information. A kindergartner has not been taught some of this stuff, so giving them an assessment on skills they haven't been taught isn't really going to help you too much. But as I showed you on our landing page, go back to that, you can see we have a button right here. If you went into the literacy library, that other lift kit library link is going to take you to the same place. But we'll go here to our lift kit library. And what you're going to see here is we have many different resources. And I'm going to walk you guys through these. And I'll link back here in just a second because I do want to show you what it is. So as I mentioned, the lift kit is designed to assist teachers in grades 3 through 5 or beyond. Really, if you have an 8th grader who doesn't know how to read, the lift kit is appropriate for them. And it begins with a 3-part diagnostic assessment. So remember our strands of the reading rope. We had that phonological or phonemic awareness, decoding, and then sight recognition. And so what this tool is going to do is it's going to determine if the breakdown is on any of those strands of the reading rope. So we start by looking at students' reading fluency. And fluency means how well a student reads. Do they read with appropriate rate, with appropriate accuracy, with appropriate expression, so they don't sound robotic, they sound conversational, like they're talking, right? Fluency is a measure of, have the students gotten to that point of sight recognition, right? So we start there. If we notice that students have a breakdown with fluency, then we have to figure out, why do they have a breakdown with fluency? Is it because they don't have the decoding skills? Then we'll move on to what we call a code knowledge diagnostic. If students don't know how to decode, it's because either they have not learned the sound spellings that are necessary to decode words, or they have gaps in phonological or phonemic awareness. But more often than not, what you're going to find is that students haven't had sufficient practice applying the sound spellings that were taught in grades K through 2. But we have to know which sound spellings they don't know. And by sound spellings, what I'm talking about are, at the most basic level, our letter sounds. But it's much more than that. We know that we have many different letter combinations that make sounds. CH, TH, CH says ch, TH says OI says oi. These things are things that we teach our students typically in 1st and 2nd grade. And if students fall apart and they don't know those things at that point, they're not going to be able to decode words that contain those sound spellings. If they see words like that, they're going to go at. So you have to know what parts of the code they don't know. Now, if students have major issues with the code and it's really choppy and challenging listening to them sound out words, or they are not applying any of these sound spellings, then you're going to do a phonological and phonemic awareness screener, right? Typically, the work of phonological and phonemic awareness is done in kindergarten.
but we know that many of our students have gaps there. We need to know what those gaps are. So you can see in our Scarborough's reading rope, we start with phonological awareness, we move on to code, and then we get to that point of sight recognition. But for this assessment, we do it kind of in the reverse. We figure out, is the breakdown with sight recognition? If the breakdown is with sight recognition, is it the result of code, a lack of code knowledge? Or is it the result of phonological and phonemic awareness? Once we figure out what it is, then we know how to support students. And we have a library of over 80 resources that you can access to support students if they need it. Keep going over here. Okay. Now, typically the teacher is going to administer this assessment. That's not to say they may not ask for your support, but they would train you. We do have resources in our literacy library, particularly our upper elementary webinars will show you precisely how to do this work. But this, within the assessment, is going to be the student profile at a glance page. This is in the student recording document. So if you are a paraprofessional and your teacher has administered this assessment to the students who need this assessment, you're going to be able to look at this information. Oh, excuse me. You're going to be able to look at this information and see how you can support your students, because it provides you with an overview of where they're at. So when we think about a student's fluency, we typically calculate that as words correct per minute. So you'll notice right here at the very kind of top, this first blue link right here says words correct per minute. We have norms for words correct per minute that will tell you whether or not a student is fluent for their grade level. So if you click that link, it will take you to norms that will show that. Your teacher will typically show you this, right? So you'll know, okay, like if a student is below, like say 52 words correct per minute in first grade, they're not a fluent reader. And I'm just throwing that number out there. I actually don't know offhand if that is the number. And if their accuracy is below 95%, so if the words correct per minute is below the 50th percentile for their grade level, or the accuracy is below that 95%, then we know that we need to figure out where the breakdown is. Okay, and your teacher is going to do this assessment. She's going to administer this code knowledge inventory and perhaps this phonemic or phonological awareness inventory. And she's going to fill this out. And what you're going to find is if students have gaps in any of these areas, that's where you want to target your work. So these skills are assessed in order from the least complex to the most complex. So if you have a student who's only reading 5 out of 20 CVC words like act, you're starting your work here, because certainly they're not going to be able to read words with our controlled vowels. And look, maybe they will. It might just be that they struggle with CVC words, but typically, if they're struggling with the most basic skills, they're also going to be struggling with these more complex skills. But this will allow you, so if you see a student is like 5 out of 20 on this page, you can go to the LIFT Kit library and find activities that address this very thing. So I'm going to take you back to the LIFT Kit library. And you can see right here that in the LIFT Kit library, if you scroll down, for example, we look at the student at a glance sheet, and we notice that they need support in decoding CVC words in isolation. I'm going to download this activity right here, and you can come on here. You don't need any kind of sign-in information or login information. It's all open to you guys. So save that link in the chat there. And we have an example of an activity that you can use. It provides an overview of the skill being taught, the materials that you need, and the materials are always going to be very, very simple. And then a description of the activity. We also have a recording sheet that you can use so that you can keep notes of what students are doing, right? Because we know that if we don't write it down, we're going to forget it the next day. And it allows you to practice and to kind of monitor their learning
over time. So I do want to thank you, or I do want to encourage you to come check these out because I think you'll find these resources very, very helpful. Now, again, you're coming to look to see where the breakdown is. And people will say, well, how many should they miss? Well, if they're missing any, it's not going to hurt them to provide support in that area. So if I have a kid who's at 19, 20 here, it could just be a fluke. Maybe they read one thing wrong. But pulling them and supporting them with CVCs is not going to hurt them. And it might give them that additional practice that they need to be truly sufficient. So support them with this work and really target it. If you don't know what an R-controlled vowel is, that's okay. The activities that you go to will have that rationale that will explain what an R-controlled vowel is, or diphthong, just in case you don't know. And guys, the work is simply teaching students to read words that contain these sound spellings. Now, if you have students who have major gaps in phonological or phonemic awareness, that's also going to be shown on the phonological and phonemic awareness screener. This is just an example of a lift activity. Another one, you can see we have that rationale, the materials, the description, the recording sheet. But if you need that phonological or phonemic awareness screener, that's fine. We also have activities that support students with that. So the lift kit is going to show you, in fact, I'll kind of go back to that. Yeah. If I come here to this, let's go to the student reporting packet. This is that foundational skills at a glance. We also have a checklist showing like kind of common mistakes that they might make. And then this is the scores for their phonemic or phonological awareness inventory. And you'll know, okay, like if the child cannot isolate medial sounds, and that's the only thing they're falling apart on, you can provide your support there. So this student profile sheet is truly an at-a-glance document that will support you in providing students with the specific support that they need. You know, if you just know that a child is a struggling reader and you pull and you work with them just on random activities, you're not going to see that growth. But if you know that a student's breakdown is that they don't know how to decode words that contain vowel digraphs, and you target your support there, you're going to see meaningful growth. But if you just pull all your struggling readers together and this kid's issue is CVC words, this kid's issue is diphthongs, and they're all together, they're going to struggle. But if you target it 3 minutes to 5 minutes with a student that's focused and targeted is so much more impactful than a 30-minute small group that's not focused on the skills that they need. So this is your roadmap. You can make sure parents have a copy of this because this will help parents help their students as well. And all of these things are linked to the library. So you can see if you come here, they'll take you right there. And you can download all of these different activities to use. Come back here. Now, as always, you can feel free to contact us at louisianaliteracy@la.gov if you have any questions about how to use these resources. You have any feedback on them. If there's anything you want more of, please let us know. We're happy to do that. We truly appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you again for your hard work. Thank you for joining us with this series. We hope that this has been helpful for you. And if there's more information you want, let us know. We are happy to create and provide that information for you. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy our Lift Kit library.